Welcome, I'm Mark Halpern. A big part of what we're all dealing with is on business side. A lot of businesses have been impacted by what's going on. A lot of them face uncertainty. I've been talking to a lot of business people across the country and in other parts of the world, and I find some commonality in experience and some difference. So today we're pleased to be joined by a couple of CEOs with companies that are both tech driven, but with different kinds of businesses. Kevin Goshak is the CEO of Arcos Labs. He's based in San Francisco. He's also got employees in Australia. And Adam Roseman is the CEO of Steady, which is a company that is not B2B, but deals with customers and consumers. So, gentlemen, thank you both for joining us. I'm glad to say that you're both healthy and your businesses are doing more than okay as compared to others. So I appreciate you making time. And I just want to start first with you, Kevin, and just tell folks the basics of your company, what you do, where your business comes from, and how many employees you have.
Sure. So we are a fraud and abuse prevention company. It's really our job to protect websites from all the data breaches and things like that you hear about in the news. So our technology is being used by big brands like Electronic Arts, Singapore Airlines, Microsoft, companies like that, to stop bad actors from breaking into your accounts. And really our objective is pretty simple. We want to make it cost more for the attacker to come after you than the return on investment they get back from doing so. And if you do that, they actually won't bother. It's pretty much all financially motivated. So we founded the company in Australia. I'm an Aussie. I moved here to San Francisco about 2.5 years ago. And we now have about half of our employees in Australia, which is our engineering and product team, and the other half are here in San Francisco.
And you voluntarily, before the order came down in San Francisco, shut offices in both places. So all your employees are working from home now in both countries, right?
That's right. Both in Australia as well as San Francisco. We shut our offices really around the same time that the big companies like Twitter and Microsoft started doing that. We really followed their lead. Obviously, these are companies that we well respect. And we thought it was appropriate that we follow suit, even in Australia, where there hasn't really been much in the way of mandatory forced stay-at-homes, certainly not to the same degree that's here in the Bay Area.
Okay, Adam, tell us the basics of Steady in terms of your size and what you do and where your employees are.
Sure. So Steady is focused on helping low to moderate income Americans make more money with the premise of the fact that workers across the U.S. that were doing low skilled and no skilled jobs were already struggling ahead of the crisis. So obviously now their lives have gotten dramatically worse over the course of the last several weeks. So very, very impactful on our customer base, specifically our member population, and look forward to talking about that. We are dual based between Atlanta and Los Angeles, have just under 50 employees, and similar to Kevin, we implemented work from home policy very early on in the curve. I'd spent a number of years working in China. And so early on, was in dialogue with a number of my friends in China, understanding what was going on there, and took it very seriously very early. So we've been home now for about a month.
Okay, so let's just talk about working at home, because I hear such divergent things about how that's going for companies that didn't have a culture of doing it either at all or very much. So Kevin, you first, how's it going? What is it doing to productivity? What is it doing to just the general operations of the firm?
Yeah, it's something that, we actually kind of really delved in head first. We gave everyone a $1,000 basically budget that they could fit at their office. We have a lot of parents as part of the company. I think for parents, this is probably the hardest time actually, especially from a work perspective. It's really difficult, I think, to both do work and have kids at home. So if they needed to pay for childcare and stuff like that, we allowed them to do so. But it has been something where, our engineers and the product team really never had a work from home policy. They've always came into the office every day. So for them, I think it's been a bit of a change, but I'd say we've done it quite successfully. We have, morning stand-up Zoom calls at 9 o'clock. We have 4 p.m. calls. We have optional virtual lunches every day. We do kind of our Friday games activities still. We've done everything that we can to really embrace the work from home culture, really from like day one. The moment we did it, we went full heads in on how do we make this the best we can for our employees.
Can you make the case now, Kevin, that when this ends, you should have office space?
It's tricky. Offices are expensive, especially here in San Francisco. So, we are definitely being open-minded. I think if our company can operate just as well with everyone being remote, then there is definitely more of a larger question mark than what has historically been around offices.
Right. Adam, how about you? How is working at home going for your employees?
Yeah, I think it's been going as well as it can. I think from a productivity perspective, I don't believe we've skipped a beat. We had a pretty lenient work from home policy previous to the last month as well. So it was not new for most of our staff. Like Kevin, we've been doing everything that we can to potentially support those individuals with their challenges. One thing that I'll make of note, and I found really interesting participating in a CEO session last week on Zoom, with one of our venture investors and a career coach that participated, is, what became very clear to me through that conversation was those actually that were at home with families, while their lives are busier today, I think they're more emotionally stable, due to the fact that they have someone who they can just go say hello to, and quite frankly, go give your child a hug, right? Which is, the greatest part of my day. And those that were younger CEOs in particular, those that perhaps lived in areas like San Francisco or New York, where living spaces were small and they were all by themselves, they were the ones that I certainly noticed were definitely struggling the most mightily relative to their own sort of emotional health. So I think just having someone today, right, at home with you, especially in this unique situation, makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, that's actually really interesting. We put a significant amount of effort into making sure we're checking in with people that live by themselves. That's something we're proactively doing because that is a very logical situation, right? Like if you have someone that's living by themselves every day, and then all they're doing is doing the same motions every day. For myself, I make sure I dress to go to work. I get changed at the end of the day. Like I try and change my workspace because it's the same space that I relax in. And we actively encourage everyone to do similar things like that, to try and break up the day a little bit and try and change it from being a work environment to a home environment each time you basically walk away. Otherwise, I think it's all going to become a blur pretty quickly.
No. You guys are both tech companies and relatively new companies, but it seems to me that one of the biggest differences between your two firms is who your clients are. Adam, your people who use your platform are, as you said, people with lower income, middle income. And Kevin's clients are companies big enough to both need and be able to afford security. So Adam, just talk first about how your folks are doing. Are people using the platform more under these circumstances, less? Are you adding people, losing people? How is that going?
Yeah, we've unfortunately had a tremendous lift, right, to our member base. It obviously is positive for our company metrics, but we struggle internally with knowing that our business is doing well in the times when so many people are suffering. And so what we're trying to do is use as much of that sort of added activity on our platform and benefit that we're receiving, and giving 100% back or 110% of that back to our member population. So we've seen our cost of acquisition drop by over 50%, right, over the course of the last several weeks for a member on our platform. The user activity go up dramatically. And it's just sad, right? I mean, something that we focus very heavily on is understanding the earnings of our members, how they're earning across work category and employer. We generate this visibility through integration with their bank accounts. So the data that we've seen over the course of the last 2 to 4 weeks now, and is only going to get worse, is just, it supports everything that we're hearing, obviously, from the standpoint of layoffs and reduction in work hours. But when you actually see that impact taking place in the bank accounts of those individuals, and you hear their stories on a daily basis, it certainly makes you work that much harder, because you know who you're helping on the other side of that of that mobile app in our instance. But at the same time, it's definitely wearing right on us and all of the individuals within the Steady platform. So we're doing everything that we possibly can right now to give people simply a fighting chance, which is the best that they can ask for.
The federal law that passed with a lot of money in it was probably the first major piece of legislation to deal with the reality of the gig economy, of freelance and part-time and consultants. Are your folks encouraged by the law? Do they feel it can help them, or is it just confusing and not a lot of specificity?
For the majority of our population, they were already living, day by day, week by week, month by month. So for them, until that money hits their account, it's irrelevant, right? And so they're already struggling. They're already missing their rent payments, their auto payments. They're struggling to ensure that they're able to put enough food on the table, pay their utility bills. So until that money's in their pockets, which none of it is yet, it's meaningless. So I'm hopeful that when the funds start to flow, that will provide a near-term impact. But I think what I'm frightened about is the fact that, you know, this is a one-time payment, right, that's set up for today. These folks are not temporarily out of work, right? The individuals who believe that all of a sudden when this period of time ends, that everything's going to go back to normal, I think are in a living in a false reality. And so we're going to need to figure out a solution, and quick, to ensure that, you know, the tens of millions of Americans who are working jobs that keep us alive and afloat every day, and are even more impactful today in terms of enabling us to be able to stay in our homes without going out, or are well taken care of, because there's not a plan in place yet that's going to get them beyond, you know, a temporary 2 to 4 week period of time.
Those are the people hurting as much as anybody else right now, besides all the people on the front lines, which obviously is part of the category of folks you deal with. Kevin, you've got some clients who, like in travel, whose businesses have gone flat. You've got other things that are still operating. Everybody still needs their security. So what's the outlook for the companies you work with? Are most of them worried about the future? Are most of them optimistic?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, you know, we have kind of a unique insight on what's happening with the kind of fraud ecosystem, and we've actually seen a pretty substantial increase in attacks actually during this process. We actually saw a dip in human-related fraud kind of when COVID started becoming kind of a big thing early March, and then that's kind of returned and kind of risen above the normal trends. So
by
we kind
a
of
very high percentage, or just a small increase?
It's rising quite a fair bit. So it's to the point where it seems like, you know, fraudsters really are like the rest of us, kind of going to work every day, doing the fraud as kind of their day job. They make a salary from it, all that sort of stuff. If they have a spouse, or if they have a family that otherwise are no longer now receiving income from other places, there's probably an incentive for them to actually double down their efforts, because it's the kind of business that doesn't really stop because of an economy downturn and things like that. So fraud and security, I think, are pretty stable industries to be in. Though that said, we do work with a lot of travel companies. We do work with a lot of ticketing businesses, even gig economy companies, where things for them really have kind of come to a halt because, you know, sadly, due to, you know, loss in business, you also get a loss in fraud, I guess, alongside that too, which,
right,
you know, positives and negatives and all. But
right,
in a situation like us, for us, you know, we obviously can just focus our efforts on companies that are booming. You know, we have a lot of video game merchants, and this is probably going to be the largest year ever for video game companies, because it's kind of now the #1 activity you do when you're staying at home.